And good morning to you. It is a new day in America. The people have spoken. A seismic shift in the House of Representatives of the United States as the Democrats take control.
But it is another story in the Senate where two races are still up for grabs for control of the Senate, still hanging in the balance. The votes are still being tallied in Montana, where they have been counting throughout the night.
And in Virginia, too close to call. We may not know the winner anytime soon. America facing some big questions this morning. It is a morning full of drama. We bring you the latest on the woman poised to be the first female Speaker of the House in history.
Today, the American people voted for change, and they voted for Democrats to take our country in a new direction.
And this morning, the human side, the tears, the dancing, and a night of surprises. The latest reporting on the last-minute vote counts from our political team. And how is your life about to change? Your pocketbook, immigrants at the border, medical research. We have it all right here on Good Morning America.
This is a special edition of Good Morning America Vote 2006, live from Times Square with Diane Sawyer and Robin Roberts.
And here we are welcoming you on this new morning, a special live broadcast for the West Coast, still covering that breaking news. As we said, Montana and Virginia will determine control of the Senate this morning. House already done. Good to have you with us.
It's got to be a morning after. For some people, it's still the same day, but it is Wednesday, November 8th, 2006. And this we do know for sure, that the Democrats have taken control of the House, picking up 26 seats. In the Senate, they picked up 4 seats so far, as we've been saying, just 2 shy of taking control there.
And of course, the state out west, Montana, about to make a lot of difference. Less than 2,000 votes separating the candidates there as they're recounting. And we'll head there in just a second.
And in Virginia, the race also close there. Just over 7,000 votes separate Republican George Allen and the Democrat there, James Webb. Out of more than 2 million votes cast, the Democrat is in the lead. It could send them into a recount that would not start until after Thanksgiving, November 28th. So America could be in suspense until like mid-December.
Whatever those uncertainties, there were some real certainties about the message being sent during the voting yesterday. 57% of the voters said they disapprove of President Bush's job performance. 56% came out saying they disapprove of the war in Iraq. Married women turned out to play a key role, and we'll tell you what that is. But right now, as we said, the story is out west in Montana. A very close race, tighter than a new pair of shoes, as one candidate said. And it could be weeks before counts and recounts are settled across the country, especially in Virginia. We'll get to that in a moment. But in Montana, one election official is having a really bad morning because he is the one who forgot to set the counting machine properly. So they've been up all night counting by hand. Let's check in right now with ABC's John Donvan in Yellowstone County, Montana. John?
Well, I know you're talking again about Dwayne Winslow, who has become everybody's favorite election official over the last 24 hours because he stepped right up and said that the reason that the voting was delayed here in Yellowstone County significantly by about 6 hours while everyone in the nation was waiting was because he pushed the wrong button. But he stood up and said it was my fault. The serious side of this is that at this point, as you've said repeatedly, Montana does not have a winner. We came into this with the race neck and neck. It remains amazingly close. The state has more or less finished counting most of its ballots in most places, but we're now at the point where the provisional ballots and the damaged ballots have to be counted, and they number, to the best that we can determine, at least in the several hundred and possibly more. So it's for that reason that Conrad Burns, the incumbent, who, by most accounts, according to Associated Press, is trailing slightly, very, very slightly, has not conceded and is not expected to concede. Whether he's going to ask for a recount, we don't know, but it would not be a surprise because at this point, again, with the numbers being where they are and with the numbers being at this point as incomplete as they are, we just don't really know who's the winner in Montana yet. Robin, Diane?
All right, John, thank you very much. And you have to give credit for the guy who stood up and said, you know what? Oops, I made a mistake, and moving forward. That's the situation in Montana. As we were saying, Virginia is the other half of the equation that could decide who controls the Senate. So let's go to ABC senior national correspondent Claire Shipman, who is in Arlington, Virginia. Good morning, Claire.
Good morning, Robin. I'll tell you, this race has been a bitter nail-biter all along, and now it looks as though the end of this drama may not come until mid-December. Here's where things stand right now. The Democratic challenger, Jim Webb, is leading the Republican Senator George Allen by just over 7,000 votes. And in the early hours of the morning, George Allen was urging caution as Jim Webb was claiming victory.
An interesting election, and the election continues.
But also, we'd like to say that the votes are in and we won.
Now, here's what will happen. The remaining votes will be counted. 99% of the precincts have reported so far, but the remaining votes will be counted, and then the vote will be certified. But that won't happen until some canvassing happens, some retabulating, essentially. That will happen November 27th. Finally, then, if the margin is still within 1%, either candidate can ask for a recount, and we wouldn't get the results of that until mid-December. Diane?
Okay, Claire, we'll keep everyone posted. But of course, as we saw all night long, elections are not just about the cold numbers, also about the democracy of the human drama. After all the handshaking, the hard fights, some candidates were left searching for brave faces, while others and their families were over the moon.
Is this a great night for Democrats?
This is the dance Democrats do when dancing for joy.
It has been a long time since our party really had something to celebrate.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Out on the West Coast, California Governor Republican Arnold Schwarzenegger celebrating his way under a barrage of balloons. And then back in New York, two Democrats everyone is watching, Senator Hillary Clinton and her husband.
It is the greatest privilege that I could have to be your senator.
And listen to the sly song playing as she exits the stage. The song, You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. And for one veteran of these contests, the former Democrat, it was all about doing it his way and winning as an independent.
I'm Joe Lieberman, and I approve of this election.
But as everyone knows, with the thrill of someone's victory comes the agony of someone's defeat. Sometimes simply gracious.
It's now time for all of us to figure out how we come back together and heal and make this thing called our country work again.
And so often, as we know, it is a family affair. A grown man, a senator from Pennsylvania, concedes. By his side, his daughter, who wrestles and struggles and squeezes her doll to try to hold back tears. It's such a tearful scene for her last night. Well, this morning, to analyze everything we learned with people coming out of the polls, we've got ABC's senior political correspondent here with us, George Stephanopoulos.
Hello.
Give us the top two things that surprised you.
Number one is how big independents went to Democrats by a huge margin, 57 to 39. We haven't seen those kind of numbers in more than 10 years. Big swing for the Democrats. The second thing that surprised me is the Democrats actually won, and it's going to sound unusual, men. Democrats just don't win men in national elections. They won them last night by a small margin, but they did it.
Yeah, that's a historic shift.
Also, the killing fields, you were referring to it on the days leading up to the election, and it's funny when you see the map now, and you talked about this also, about how you look at the Northeast now, and it's more Democrats. And
all
then
blue.
I know, and
all
then down
blue.
south.
And if you look at those killing fields, it's the five states going from Indiana, Ohio, Connecticut, Rhode Island, New York. There were 21 seats in play there. The Democrats won 11, could win 13. Two other states to look at, and this surprised me as well. The two big presidential states, well, they're actually small, Iowa and New Hampshire. Republican House members were wiped out in both states. For the first time since Woodrow Wilson was president, you have two Democratic congresspeople from New Hampshire.
Not just the Democratic Party that had a big night last night. Probably the best record so far, Michael J. Fox.
Big night for Michael J. Fox. Right now, he's racked up 4 wins. He campaigned in Missouri, Maryland, New Jersey, Ohio Senate races. All 4 won. If Jim Webb comes in Virginia, Michael J. Fox was 5 for 5 on stem cell research.
The other thing that surprised me looking through the exit polling was that the Democrats gained so much ground on the issue of terrorism and trust to handle terrorism. And that had always been the high ground for the president. That's where he always
Three elections. He was hoping for a third election in a row. In 2002, in 2004, President Bush and the Republicans won on the issue of national security and terrorism. They had huge leads on it. Last night, they only had a small 5-point lead among people who cared about terrorism. On the other hand, if Iraq was your #1 issue, and it was for most voters, it broke heavily for the Democrats, more than 60% to the Democrats.
Do you think the president heard the people? Did he hear what people going out and voting? That was very strong.
I think that's the message we're going to get from the president at his press conference a little later today. He's going to say, I have heard you. I am ready to work with the Democrats. He's been making very gracious calls to Democrats all morning.
And you've been going nonstop.
Hey, this is my Super Bowl. This is it for me, right?
30 minutes sleep, maybe, in how many days? Thanks, George.
It's good to be with you.
I know, another long day ahead. All right, George, thank you. Earlier, we spoke to Republican National Committee Chairman Ken Mehlman for a little post-game analysis. I asked him what happened to the Republicans last night.
Well, obviously, there's a lot of data we're going to go to look through, but it was a very difficult evening for our party. On a personal level, I have to say it was disappointing for me. I lost a number of friends in Congress, Jim Talent, Rick Santorum, Bob Ehrlich, governor of Maryland. These are all people that I respect a lot. These are all people of principle. I'm very disappointed that they lost. At the same time, Robin, you know, one thing I strongly believe, and that is when you have difficulty, you try to learn from it and you try to be better. And I think we as a party need to look at what happened. The people clearly sent us a message. We need to receive that message, and then we need to recommit ourselves to our key principles. We need to try to work on a bipartisan basis to accomplish things for our country. A lot of the problems we face are not Republican problems or Democratic problems, but American problems. We've also got to make sure the #1 issue listed was corruption. We've got to make sure, it seems to me, that people that are involved, whether it's in the Congress or at other levels, are people who public service is the top calling and the top goal. And all of those have got to be important things. I'm disappointed that for the first time since 1994 there won't be a Republican speaker. At the same time, I think it's worth stepping back for a second and looking at the incredible accomplishments over the last 12 years. Welfare reform, jobs created, our nation more secure. All of these are things that Republicans have done because we focused on our principles. We've got to do the same thing over the coming years.
The speaker will now be the first woman ever, Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah.
How will she and the president work together?
Well, first of all, let me just say I congratulate Nancy Pelosi. I congratulate Rahm Emanuel. I congratulate them on their victory last night. The fact that America will have its first female speaker, I would prefer it to be a Republican, of course, but that's an historic accomplishment that we can all take pride in. I think there are a lot of issues that aren't Republican issues. You know, if you stop and think historically, the war in Iraq, there's a parallel to that, it seems to me, and that's the Korean War, which at the time there was a tremendous amount of public concern and anxiety about. But in those early years of the Cold War, Republicans and Democrats came together behind something that was called the Truman Doctrine because they recognized that the threat of Soviet communism wasn't a threat to Democrats or Republicans, but to all Americans. It seems to me the threat of Islamic fascism is a similar threat. And we need to come together as a nation and across partisan lines recognizing that what the enemy threatens is all of our freedoms and all of our security, and we can work together to make that happen. There are other areas too. Immigration reform is one, health care is one, and there are others as well.
Well, Ken Mehlman, thank you very much. I know you saw the president last night. You had dinner with him. A long day again today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks.
Take care.
And they said it would be the year of the woman. We were just talking about Nancy Pelosi here. But the predictions came true nationwide, too, in terms of the races. All in all, the total number of women now serving in the House could increase by as many as 15. And as you heard, Nancy Pelosi will be the first Speaker of the House to be female in history. So we thought this morning it's time to take a closer look at what she'll do and who she is. And here's GMA Senior National Correspondent Claire Shipman.
Democrats are ready to lead.
The woman who's dragged her fractious party across the finish line is a political oxymoron, a disciplined Democrat.
I thought I could have a winning strategy, but it did take organization, focus, and discipline.
The no-nonsense mother of five, grandmother of five, didn't even run for Congress until she was 46 years old. But growing up, watching her father, the Baltimore mayor, she learned the tricks of political horse trading early.
There are colleagues who are ill-informed.
As minority leader, for example, she hasn't hesitated to withhold favors or leadership positions from Democrats who vote the wrong way.
Do you think of yourself as a tough politician?
I think of myself as a very strong person who never loses focus.
And so look for this to remain a key refrain in her new job.
We do want to bring troops home because we are not a force for stabilizing Iraq.
Pelosi insists, though, that her rough campaign attacks
The Olympic torch has made its way from the skyscraping mountains of the Italian Alps toward Torino, passing through Sestriere, where reigning Alpine World Cup champion Bode Miller will compete in 5 events. The torch just about to conclude a journey of some 7,000 miles through the Italian peninsula. The Winter Games have come to Italy for the 2nd time, the first since Cortina in 1956, 50 years ago. Many of you at home are familiar with this country's other famous majestic cities, but now this mountainside metropolis tucked into Italy's northwest corner is about to gain its own global profile. The torch's journey concludes tonight at the opening ceremony of the 20th Olympic Winter Games at Stadio Olimpico. Built by Benito Mussolini in 1933, this stadium underwent a $35 million facelift, just one piece of a massive revitalization of this city for these games. Hello, everyone. Jim Lampley from Studio One at the International Broadcast Center. The Torino Games officially begin tonight with the opening ceremony. And unlike the Summer Games, where the Parade of Nations is reserved for the latter portion of the ceremony, here at the Winter Games, the athletes march early. Of course, the night will culminate with the lighting of the cauldron, the identity of the final torchbearer, as always, a closely kept secret. Bob Costas and Brian Williams are out at Stadio Olimpico, and we'll join them in about 40 minutes. But first, we'll talk about 3 of the athletes who could define these games. Bode Miller, certainly the most visible athlete coming into these games for his growing resume of historic successes and his steady stream of headline-making comments. He was on the downhill course today for official training. Miller's place in Sunday's downhill is secure, but there are 3 other American men vying for 2 remaining spots, and one of them qualifies based on today's training results. We'll have that for you shortly. Also, in Bardonecchia, where he's tweaking his 1080s, we'll check in with the California team called the Flying Tomato, Shaun White, who swept into these games with victories in all 5 Olympic qualifying events. But we begin with the most recognizable athlete on the U.S. team, 5-time world champion and double Olympic medalist Michelle Kwan, competing in her 3rd Olympics at age 25 in search of the one prize which has eluded her, Olympic gold. Kwan took an unusual path to these games, petitioning onto the team because of an injury, and for the first time arrives at the Olympics as a clear underdog. Kwan spoke with our Mary Carrillo this afternoon.
You have had, at various times, hip problems, back problems, a groin pull. You're not going to tell me you're 100%?
You know, I wish I could spend more time in the ice rink training, but this is what I have. You know, I have to go back to what the body's programmed to do. I've done all these jumps a million times before. So when I had my groin pull, I couldn't do several jumps. So when the doctor put me on the strict order, like, can't do double axe, can't do this, I'm like, ah. But then I thought, you know, I've done this for so many years. Just, you have to know your body. You have to kind of play it like an instrument.
Right, right. And you're obeying it?
I am.
Well, because of the groin pull, you had to petition for a place on the U.S. team and convince a panel of officials that you were fit enough to be here. No pressure. No pressure.
That's what one of the judges came up to me before I skated, like, oh, don't worry about it. We're just here to watch. I'm like, and tell that to the camera, 1,000 camera crews outside, and, you know, there's tension in the rink, but, yeah, that's what I had to do. It was unusual circumstances, but...
You never had to do that before, something like that.
Mm-mm.
What, was it a whole different kind of pressure?
It was my own Olympics. Nothing is ever certain, so when I finished the program, I made a few mistakes. You know, I did triples, I did triple flip, triple lutz, but, you know, you finish skating and that's all you can do. You know, you wait and see.
That was some relief on your face. I mean, you looked exhausted, relieved.
I couldn't breathe. I was like, it was just a whole moment. I mean, I got phone calls from everybody. Nancy Kerrigan, I mean, she was wishing me well. I mean, a lot of phone calls.
What did Nancy Kerrigan say to you?
You know, she's known me since I was 12 years old. And I remember the first nationals that I was in the same dressing room, and I was like, I was telling my coach, I'm like, and now it's just like, you wanted to go to the 3 Olympics, now here you are. I'm like, wow, it's just amazing.
The thing is, we're so used to seeing classical, you know, moves from you to classical music. And you're showing up in Torino with techno.
With techno?
Isn't that where you're going?
Well, I've got my own, that's my short program, and it's got this powerful vibe to it. So hopefully the audience will get involved.
And I've heard that you're like a hip-hop.
I love hip-hop.
So this isn't out of your comfort zone to go this far away?
On the ice, it's okay. But long program, I'll go back to what I'm very comfortable at.
The favorites here, Michelle, obviously the Russian Aryna Slutskaya and the American Sasha Cohen. For you to win the one color Olympic medal that you're lacking, the gold, is the biggest challenge going to be your physical condition or your mental attitude? Or is it going to be emotional, like, I got to attack, I got to go after this thing? Really?
I'm never emotional.
That's right.
There's something about being at the Olympics, there's something about the sport of figure skating that moved me so much. It's so beautiful, and it is a sport. You know, win or lose, I'm here just to skate and try my best and skate from the heart.
We'll all be watching. Thanks.
Thank you.
Nancy Kerrigan was by no means alone among those in the figure skating community to express their support for Kwon and for her inclusion on this year's Olympic team. There's a simple and practical reason for that. By finishing 4th at last year's World Championships, combined with Sasha Cohen's 2nd-place finish, Kwon assured that the United States would have 3 rather than just 2 competitor spots here in Torino. That was just the latest in more than a decade of contributions Michelle Kwon has made as the public face of U.S. figure skating. Next, we go to Sestriere, where training continues for the glamour event of skiing, the men's downhill. And the world's 2 alpine powers, the United States and Austria, each used today's run to select an additional member of their teams for Sunday's gold medal race. Plus, a first look at American Alpine world champion, Bode Miller.
Here's to all those who dream of being a champion.
What are you waiting for? A written invitation to participate in life? Well, you have one. It's called a birth certificate. So, what does life take? Life takes ambition and practice. It takes luck.
The 20th Olympic Winter Games on NBC are brought to you by Budweiser, proud sponsor of the U.S. Olympic team. By Target, expect more, pay less. By United, flying America's team for more than 25 years. And by Visa, proud sponsor of the Olympic Winter Games. No matter what it takes to live your dreams, life takes Visa.
Sestriere is an Italian ski town with a French name and now an instant Olympic heritage as part of the Torino Games. Skiing is its passion and après-ski its pleasure. The mountains are its comfort and its peril, Sestriere's beauty and its beast, and the peaks beckon to a special breed of athletes. Sunday, the world's bravest ski racers will succumb to the lure, diving down 3,000 feet, testing their skills and their wills, carving through twists and turns, flying over bumps and jumps. These are everyday thrills for these daredevils, whose lust for speed dominates the inherent danger of downhill. The fun is going fast. The goal is first place. The prize is Olympic gold. Today is day 2 of men's downhill training here at Sestriere. Tim Ryan with Todd Brooker. Darren Rawls, the American star, is not going to run today, and there's a good reason why. Darren Rawls here on day 1 of the training. Beautiful conditions for the racers here. Their first look at the course here at Sestriere, above the tiny community of Sestriere known as Borgata.
Tim, since the very first race that I saw Darren this season, he has been on a mission. I mean, he's got an Olympic mission. He wants a gold medal here, but this is also a very important season. It will be his last season on the World Cup, and he's looking to leave his legacy on the World Cup Tour.
Boy, the way he started here, looks like Darren's in a very determined mood. A lot of racers will sometimes just kind of make sure they're finding their line and not go all out, but it looks like Darren holding that tuck much of the way here.
Well, that's exactly right. That's what these training runs are for, but Darren has always really focused in on his line early, and he wants to hit it early, so this first run is important for him. Remember, Tim, he's a 185-pound guy racing in a field of 230-pound linebacker types, and on a speedway like this, it's important for him to be perfect.
3 downhill victories already this year, 3rd in the World Cup standings in downhill. He had a victory 2 years ago on this very course, so he's familiar with it. Of course, it's a different gate set, different conditions.
Well, Tim, it's obvious he loves this course, but he also loves these snow conditions. And the harder and the icier it is, the better Darren Rawls can manufacture turns. He can get inside the lines and edge harder than anybody else, and on the hard snow, it will not slow him down.
800s ahead there of Michael Valkofer is the leader in the downhill standings this season, and obviously a contender.
You got to admit, though, this is an unusual first run. He's trying to tuck everywhere he can. He's right on the gates. I mean, he's racing this thing like it is the race. I'm kind of surprised at this.
Well, there's no let-up for sure so far. As he approaches the bottom part of the course, Darren Rawls just letting it all go.
Well, see if he tucks right to the finish here. That's an indication right to the finish line. He's trying to win this thing, Tim.
More than a second faster than Michael Valkofer. He's thrown down the gauntlet. After the run, he spoke with Lewis Johnson.
Darren, how did you find your first practice run here on the Olympic downhill course?
Man, it just it was sweet top to bottom. I was charging pretty hard, and the snow is insane. It's pretty smooth. There's a few like rough sections, but the snow is really hard. It's compact. And you lay into the skis and tip them like straight up, like almost like, you know, fully laid up vertical. And when you can get that going and you feel some good power building up, it's a good time.
Well, that was yesterday. This is today. Darren Rawls took the day off. Bodie Miller didn't, though. He's getting ready to go here. Training day number 2. The American superstar yesterday was back in the middle of the pack, about where he would have chosen to be, I would think. But what do you think he'll do today, Todd Brooker?
Tim, Bodie's got a pretty standard routine when it comes to training runs. He doesn't like to show too much early on, and what he does like to do.
From Italy's coastal plain to its alpine heights, soon to reach its final destination, Torino's Stadio Olimpico. The start of our opening ceremony coverage less than 30 minutes away. Right now, we go back to Sestriere. For more downhill training coverage, Tim Ryan and Todd Brooker.
You're looking at Steve Nyman, one of the 3 young Americans battling for a spot in the final 4 racers who will go for the United States on Sunday.
Come on, Stevie, today, man. 4. Come on, Stevie!
He's 23 years old from Orem, Utah, and like his teammate Scott McCartney, he finished the season on the World Cup Tour leading into the Olympics with a 4th place finish at Garmisch, kind of coming out of nowhere with that very good result.
Yeah, but Tim, Steve Nyman has got a couple really big things going for him. One thing is his size, 6'4" 230 pounds. The man is massive and strong. He's definitely made for downhill. The other thing is he's talented. I mean, he has come out of nowhere. He's been able to get great results both nationally and internationally. I mean, this is a rising superstar.
Well, this competition today is indeed exactly that. You can see he's going all out because he wants one of those spots on this team for Sunday's Olympic race.
I think you have to remember, too, there's a lot going on in this course, Tim. A lot of turns, a lot of bumps. Darren Rawls has been here before. Bodie Miller has been here before, but these other 3 guys are seeing it for the first time. So if they're making some mistakes on the way down in this training run, they're doing it for good reason.
As usual, the Austrians and the Swiss are having a competition like this one, but it's very rare. In fact, it's never happened for the U.S. to be actually having a competition within their team to pick the 4 spots, 2 after, of course, Rolfs and Miller.
And Tim, it hasn't all been easy for Steve Nyman either. He had 2 broken legs that he's had to deal with last season.
Beginning with the man who comes to these games with the highest profile and rather heavy expectations. Jimmy, you went across the border into the French Alps to visit Bode Miller at his last pre-Olympic competition.
Lamps, I did, and it has been a turbulent year so far for Bode Miller. He hasn't produced the results he did in 2005, but he says that success isn't necessarily about, quote, the order of finish. He says a lot of things, a lot of which are hard to figure out. He doesn't often grant interviews, but just this past week I went to Chamonix, France, site of the final World Cup race before the Olympic Games, and spent some time with the enigmatic Miller inside the RV, which serves as his home away from home as he travels.